Guys are too much. All right, we are live. Welcome to today's afternoon futures update for today's date, Wednesday or Tuesday, July the 7th. Let me just mute myself in the background. There we go. Perfect. We got shenanigans happening behind me here. So welcome to today's session, guys. A lot quieter on this front as it was yesterday. Volume is looking pretty light as well. Not as heavily news driven as last week was. We did have Fed Powell on the docket today speaking, and that's what we got for today. He is going to be speaking remainder of the week, I believe, tomorrow after the FOMC meeting minutes, and I believe on Thursday as well he'll be speaking. So still a lot more speeches coming from Fed Powell, something to keep an eye on, and the FOMC meeting minutes tomorrow, which is kind of giving us the opinion that markets are kind of waiting for that to play out. So all that we have for today's session, we had a couple of events come out as far as numbers. We had, the June NFIB Small Business Optimism Index came in at 103.3 versus 103.1 expected. So a bit of a beat on that front. And the only other real number we had was the May JOLTS number, the Job Opening and Labor Turnover Survey, I believe that's what it is, came in at 7.323 million versus 7.473 million expected. A bit of a miss on that front. As far as squawks, we had President Trump tweeting back on Twitter again. Very good numbers on the economy, much potential growth, trade deals being negotiated or being set up for negotiation. We have been treated very unfairly, to put it mildly, by other countries for many years, but that is changing. We also had a remark out of the White House from Advisor Kudlow, who mentioned that rapid growth and low unemployment does not cause inflation, room to take back December hike. And then we had Fed's Harker, who is a non-voting hawk. So essentially what he says does not really matter. But he did mention that Fed does not see any immediate need to move rates up or down at this point, would support cuts if the economy was weakening substantially, but not seeing such weakening. So two things on the back of that. Number one, he's a hawk. So a hawk is generally going to be looking to increase rates, not to cut them. So it's not out of line for him to have that kind of an opinion. And number two, he's a non-voter, which means what he says doesn't really matter. So that's that. As far as what we have for the remainder of the session, as mentioned, nothing really on the docket. We do have FOMC member Richard Quarles speaking at 2 p.m. This gentleman is a voting member. I just don't remember if he's a hawk or not. But in any case, 2 p.m., kind of watch out around there once he's speaking. He is a voter, so what he says does matter, or has a little bit more weight to it than our non-voters. So we'll see what he says there. Look out for that at 2 p.m. Eastern. That is basically all that we've got on the agenda for this part of the session. So with that being said, let's switch on over to our charts here. We'll give you guys a look at the quote board, see what the volume is looking like on the session. Then we'll jump back into the charts and see what some good levels are if you will be trading into the remainder end of today's session. So first things first, let me get that pen tool out. There it is. First things first, crude oil futures right down here. They are, previous day close, or previous day daily change rather, is 0.45%. The previous day close came in at 57.57. Where currently last traded price was 57.94. So up marginally from the previous day close. What you will notice, however, is that there's super light volume, only 388,000 contracts traded so far on the queues, which is quite light. And you are seeing, a bit of consolidation just on this chart here. We pressed off of the open, kind of made another run up, tried pressing back towards those lows, and now we're trading back up towards these highs. So just a consolidation overall. However, the way the market structure is starting to form suggests we might try a little bit of upside if the bulls can get this market back above the pit session open at the 57.92s. So that's what we've got on crude, light volume, relatively choppy on the session. S&P 500, it's a little bit a little bit of a curveball here because the previous day change shows that it's, down slightly 0.04%. Your previous day close came in basically almost where we're at now. That's why you're seeing such a marginal, marginal weakness. Previous day close came in at the 79s. Last traded price was the 77 quarters. So down slightly 0.04%. And again, what you're seeing, this is kind of, the volume, 592,000, big volume, call it like a liquidity vacuum, if you will. Last two weeks or so, 2-3 weeks on average around this time, 1 to 1.4 million contracts was the norm. And really this week and the tail end of last week, we were sitting around these numbers. So about half the volume that we've been seeing over the last 2-3 weeks. And as a result, you are seeing a lot more consolidation. Your moves aren't as directional. There's not as much aggression. It's generally slow grinds higher and slow grinds lower, and a lot of chop in between. And this makes it quite a difficult market to trade. If you're looking to trade momentum strategies or breakouts, you'd be getting absolutely annihilated in these kinds of conditions. So that being said, you guys can see, both of these markets relatively choppy. SPOs have been grinding higher, but overall, it's been a bit of a chop fest within that press higher. So light volume, not really looking for much direction, but we'll give you guys some key levels to look out for and these pivots as well, so we can get a better idea of what just might roll out. On the pivots, crude oil 1 hour chart here, you can see that R1 held as resistance. This was on the 7th, and on the 8th session of the 8th, we came up into R1, rolled off. Yesterday's session, this is today's session, the 9th, R1 came up into it again, rolled off of it, and we came right back into that support. So kind of same story that we had yesterday. We were seeing an overall consolidation here. We were mentioning if they press off of this resistance, if they can hold it, we'll likely get a move to the lower end of that range, and that's what happened today. We tested the top of it, rolled off of it back to the lows, and now we're kind of pressing back up. We are above the pivot at the moment, 57.75, and I'm seeing the VWAPs line up with that level as well. So a bit of a little squeeze location here. As long as that pivot does hold as support, you can look for a press up into that R1, back below the pivot. Those range lows become vulnerable for another press lower, and that's what we're seeing on that front. On the S&P 500, we are getting somewhat of a transition here. You guys are seeing we kind of failed to make a new high around these 3,005s. This was into the July 4th holiday. A little bit of consolidation. We've rolled off from there, pressed up. Now we've made a marginal low from below yesterday's low, or sorry, this was from the 5th. So that was Friday's low. We've made a new marginal low there. Now we're just rotating up. Question here becomes, does this pivot hold if we can get up there? 29.82s around there. You can see that was a bit of a swing high here on the hourly time frame. And, given the fact that we are still seeing lower lows and lower highs, we haven't really had a break of that structure. You can argue that the bears are still in control. And really the line in the sand for me here is these 29.82s. If the bears can defend that level, I'll be looking for a press back down towards those lows. If not, if we get a breakout above that level, that will kind of signal to me that, this little consolidation, this little consolidation is kind of forming a little bit of a down of a wedge, and this could be a breakout of the wedge. So whether that gets confirmed or not, we'll see. What will need to happen for that to be a confirmed breakout is obviously a move above that pivot. And then on the next rotation lower, we'll want to see it make a higher low. If that happens, then we can start looking to target upside for press back up above 3,000, those 3,005s. Until that happens, sellers are in control. Pivot is your next key level. We'll see if they can defend it up there if it does reach up into that zone. So let's take a look at crude here. This is my 10-tick range bar chart. And as mentioned, make this guy a bit bigger. As mentioned, we have our open 9 a.m. right here, sold off into the 5-day point of control. Ironically enough, it came right back into that consolidation, pretty much halfway from what led to that rally, just returned back right into the middle and we found some support. Buyer stepped in, pressed this thing up into that open, couldn't quite get back above the open, rotated back down into that zone, and we've held it twice now. And as mentioned, you know, if you kind of draw out these swings, what you are noticing is the high, or rather the lows, are starting to climb a little bit. So while we have a horizontal resistance level, I am seeing those highs starting to form, or those lows forming a bit higher on each rotation lower, which kind of has me thinking, upside above this open might be in store for the session. We'll see what happens here. As I mentioned, this is your line in the sand below the open. Sellers still, you can argue they're still in control. You can look to fade this thing back down. But ultimately, I'd probably be looking to pick up longs if we do get another press down into this VWAP. You've got your pivot lining up right there as well, your PP. You've got both session VWAPs, and you can see we've had some buyers step in that level already. So that's showing there is buying interest around there, and you're seeing some pretty nice volume on this press up higher as well. So a little bit of a pullback into that zone could look to get geared long for a press back into the open, and even above that, pressing up into the overnight high around those 58.20s. So that's what we got on crude for you guys. On the SPUs, here is the session so far. It's been a bit of a boring one, to be honest, but you can see we opened right down here. Open came in at the 67 quarter, and we had a bit of a run up, consolidation, another run up, and now we're kind of consolidating again. What I am seeing, as mentioned, this is a level that the bears should hold on, the bears should hold if they plan on sinking this guy lower. You can see here we had a couple of rotations. This one kind of broke through it. Then once we got back under it, you see one rotation, 2 times, 3 rotations, and then we sunk it below those previous lows. Now we are coming back up into that level. And, as I just mentioned on crude, it's not surprising to see a market come back to a consolidation zone that preceded a large move. And that's kind of what we're seeing. That was a consolidation that preceded this move. Now we're back up in that zone. We'll see if the sellers are going to step in to defend this and press the sucker lower, or whether the buyers come in and press this thing above that zone, breaking above that previous swing high and above that one. If that happens and rotates back down, we start seeing some support start to form. At that point, you can start looking to press it back up as a higher low. Whether that happens here or whether it pulls back into here after a breakout, what you will be anticipating is a higher low. So you won't want to see it get back down below that 63s. If that's what we get and we start seeing support, again, you can look to potentially pick it up for a press on higher. So that's what we got on these markets for you guys today. The final bit of the agenda is our TRADEPRO Performance Index. So for those that are newer, what this Performance Index basically shows is how our team does. And we don't vote in here, our traders in the office. This is all the community voting. So on today's session, despite a little bit of obstacles in the form of lower volume, a lot more chop, the team still did very well. 56.5% were up on the session, just under 20% were flat, and 26.09% were down on the session, giving us an overall positive amount of 73.91%, positive being anyone that is flat or up on the session. So great numbers again. I'm happy to see that bounce back from the 8th from yesterday, and we look to continue stronger. On average, we've been seeing around 66 to 70% of the room being positive on a monthly basis. So that average continues, and we look to drive this thing stronger into the remainder of this week. As mentioned, FOMC tomorrow, so expecting a little bit more volatility to start coming into these equity futures as of tomorrow. And that is basically it. I see a message in here. Are we going to trade? That's up to you, my man or my woman. I'm not sure if you want to trade or not. I will not be trading on this. That is what the room is for. That's one of the benefits of being a member. But on here, we're giving you guys levels to look out for if you are going to be trading into the remainder of the session. So that is going to be a wrap, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get back on the camera so I can log this off. If you will be trading into the remainder of the session, you know what those 3 rules are. You want to remain patient, you want to remain diligent, and you want to remain disciplined. especially with these FOMC minutes tomorrow. You know, it could rally, or it could flush into the close on today's session. But the way it's been going, it's a little bit quiet, and I'm not really seeing too much. Of course, the market can prove me wrong. It's been known to do so, and we'll just take what it shows us and take it from there. That's what being a trader is. You can never give 100% certainty with what's going to happen. You can only put the probabilities in your favor and look to execute when those probabilities are in your favor. And that's basically going to be my rant. #over for today's session. Take care, guys. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a good one.